putting the bike in the case. We've deflated the tires on both wheels. We've got to put a protector on the outside of the hub where it's going to fit up against the case. That's going to prevent the hub axle from puncturing the case and protect the hub as well. When we're fitting the wheel into the case, we want to start by placing the wheel in at the hinge. And I'm also locating the valve stem up at the top center of the case because I'm going to use that valve stem later on as a reference point for future packing. We've also got a protective pad that we're going to wrap around the front wheel here. The rear triangle of our frame is going to wind up being located in this space, and so it may contact the front rim, and so we want to protect the front rim from any abrasion while the bike is traveling. So now I'm going to go ahead and push this wheel into the case, taking advantage of the flexibility of the case at the outside edges. Slip that guy in there. And then again, because my rear triangle is going in this corner of the case, I'm going to create as much space here in the rear for the rear triangle as I can by pushing that wheel all the way down in the case in that corner. Next, we're going to put our front triangle into the case. Now I've loosened up the stem at the fork steer so that I can rotate the stem to accommodate fitting it into the case here. So our fork winds up being rotated backwards, and to get it to fit down in there nice and flat as I can, because I've loosened that stem, now I can push the stem down nice and flat as well. We'll keep our handlebar outside of the case for now, and we're going to go ahead and put our rear wheel into the case. So for the rear wheel, we're going to put two of these protectors on. One of them winds up on the up against the outside wall of the case, and the other one winds up sandwiched between the axles of the front hub and the rear hub. When we put the rear wheel in, we're going to put it cassette side down. The cassette is essentially going to rest against our down tube. We're going to orient that valve stem again at the top center of the case, because we may use it as a point of reference later. And we're going to ease this wheel into the case. Also keeping in mind that we put the wheel in first at the hinge, so we can take advantage of the flexibility of the case. When we're putting this last side of the front wheel in, we want to be careful that we're not pinching any of these cables or electronic wires. And again, once that wheel's in there, because our rear triangle is going to wind up here, we're going to push the wheel down as far down into this corner as we can to create the space for our rear triangle. Actually, before I put that wheel in there, I should have put my crankset in, so I'm going to go ahead and hold that up and slip that crankset in. It's just a nice flat spot there for the crankset, and the spindle can fit up in between the spokes. And then again, push that wheel down as deep into the corner of the rear of the case as we can. Now we're ready for our rear triangle to go into the case. Grab that guy, and this is going to be chain stays in line with the hinge. Rear triangle to the back corner. Just going to ease that brake caliper forward to make some space there for us. Set that back, and you can see the top tube sort of winds up on this side of the axle. So now rear triangles in there nicely. Going to rotate our handlebars around and slip them into the case as well. Now the handlebars are going to have to fit down under some of those spokes. And then as I get to about this point, I'm just going to depress the levers a little bit so that the levers can drop down in between some of those spokes as well. And then we can get this, you know, nice and low so that our case will close without contacting our front wheel. We've got our saddle and seat post to put in, and the wide part of the saddle fits really nicely where that wide part of the rear triangle is, so we can just kind of slide that guy in there. Okay. Remember, we've got our water bottle cages in this bag. I'm going to sneak this opening right over that front rim, so it gives us a nice place to locate our water bottle cages. And then we've got our accessory bags, which will just sit nicely right down here, so that they won't be bouncing around in our case either. And I think we're ready to close this thing up. So when we close it up, we're just going to close that gently, check our front rim, make sure nothing's going to impinge on any spokes. Press that down and lock it up. So since that closed really nicely, with everything located where it is, I'm going to create a little reference for where my front wheel is located, so I know that with this wheel, if I locate the wheel in this orientation every time, then I know these hoods will clear through this space in the spokes without impinging on one of the spokes.
Could you wait a minute, Charles? Could you go back and describe that interference a little bit? I missed that.
Yeah. So when I'm closing the case, I'm checking to see if any of these spokes contact the brake hoods, because this is the part of the bike that tends to stand up the highest. So I want to make sure that as I'm closing the case, I'm not damaging one of these spokes by compressing it against the hoods. If as I close the case I see that, then I'll rotate the wheel slightly, right, to find an opening where that hood will clear the wheel. And so once my wheel is located where I want it, I want to pack the bike consistently every time. So I'm going to mark just inside the case a little alignment spot where I'm going to locate my valve stem every time I pack the bike. Okay, and I'm also going to just mark my wheel, mark the side of the case for the angle at which the wheel's in there. And that just gives me a reference for next time I pack the bike as to where to locate that front wheel for the most effective packing. Now we can close up our case and be on our way.